Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, April 21st, and this is In Case You Missed Psychology 1. Well, if you're watching this, that means you couldn't make it to class today, and that is okay. I hope you're well. Hope those around you are well, and I hope that you are staying warm during what is hopefully the last cold snap of our spring, summer, early fall. Let's go with that. Okay. I'm going to run you through everything that we did today. If you have any questions about any of the things that I'm going to talk about here, please make sure and reach out to me. Don't ignore it or forget about it. Let me know right away, and I will get back to you and help you out. Okay. All right. So let's do the reminder stuff first. And actually, I'm going to add something to this as we talk so that I don't forget to do it. So updates. Project journal. Okay, so your updates. First of all, you're going to be getting new homework today, okay, or new work today, which I think you'll be able to do during class this week. And that is going to be a Chapter 2 crash course. We're going to do one more crash course video, hopefully here at the start, that's going to help you guys out and get you some ideas about this unit that we're about to get started on. If you owe me any old homework, please make sure you're getting that done and in. I do have a couple of things that have slipped through the cracks for a few of you guys. Right now, those things are in Infinite Campus as zeros. As soon as you get those things done, I will grade them and get them in for you and update your grade to reflect that good work that you guys do. Test grades are in. I said that yesterday, but in case you didn't look in Infinite Campus, please make sure and do that. There are a few of you guys that did not take that test yet. Now, if you are one of the people that did not take that test yet, please make sure and get that done as soon as possible. And if you need the link once again to that test, you could just chat me or email me and I can send that along to you in whichever method works for you. Okay, please do make sure and go in and check your grades so far in Infinite Campus. Check those early and often. And if anything seems amiss or off, please make sure and let me know. Okay. All right. So there is the recap part of things. Now, the second part of our day is we wrote Dream Journal number 2. If you are not sure what I am talking about, you can look at the handout that I shared with everybody yesterday. And if you have any questions about that, you can definitely let me know. So basically, today is going to be journal number 2, or in-class journal number 2. And today is 421. And your shortened version of the topic is happiest or proudest moments. My lights just went off. We're just going to keep going. What I'm going to have you guys do is when you get done hearing this thing, I would pause the video, set a stopwatch on your clock for 8 minutes, and write for 8 minutes about this topic, and then you can pick back up. So what you're going to do for journal entry number 2 is you're going to write about your happiest and proudest moments in life and why they made you feel that way. Now, if you can write about one for 8 minutes, that's great. But if you have to write about more than 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, that's great. But you're going to tell me kind of what happened and why that made you feel the way it did. Okay, so happiest or proudest moments in life and how they made you feel. Okay, you can pause right now and then set a stopwatch for 8 minutes and write. Okay, I'll see you back in a few minutes. Okay, so if you kind of followed along with what I'm telling you to do, you just unpaused, you wrote your journal. And so a couple quick reminders about the Dream Project. First of all, if you would choose to, please feel free to write personal on the top of that entry if there's something in there that you don't want me to read for whatever reason, and that's fine. That is A-okay. A couple other reminders about the Dream Project. If anything motivates you today to write one of those out-of-class journals, remember, just label it out-of-class journal number 1 with the date, and then get cracking on whatever you want to write about. Write for about 8 to 10 minutes, and when you're done, you're done. Okay. If you have a dream tonight, write it down. Get any details down that you can, so that we're able to, keep moving forward with the project. And as always, if you guys have any questions about that, please let me know. Now, for the rest of our class today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you guys through the beginning of Chapter 2. We're going to go over the objectives. We're going to talk a little bit about ethics. I'm going to bring the lights back up here, maybe. Apparently it doesn't like it when I wave. There we go. Didn't really help much. We're going to look at the objectives for the unit, and we're going to talk about ethics. And then obviously you have the assignment for the week, and you have some work time if you are allotted for that today. Now remember, I'm not going to post screenshots of these chapters, so you do need to be getting down the notes. So you have the luxury, you can pause and take a screenshot of it, or you can write it down in your notebook. Okay, so I'm going to bring back a couple of my friends on this first slide from chapter 1. What we're going to look at in chapter 2 is methods of psychology. We are going to look at how to run an experiment, how to do a survey, how to do an interview, how to hack an interview from the backside of it. What we're basically going to focus on is how do psychologists and scientists go about collecting data that can be used for psychological use. So we're going to look at this unit from the lens of a research psychologist. From last chapter, we talked about research psychologists and applied psychologists. We're going to talk about what it is that research psychologists do. Now, it's important to mention here that there are rules within how we collect data, how we collect information, things that are okay and things that aren't okay. We're also going to discuss those in this unit. Obviously, when Dr. Bunsen, Honeydew, and Beaker go about sciencing, they don't always do things properly. Obviously, they're a children's show around for comedy and usually hurting Beaker in some way, shape, or form. But there are definitely a lot of things that we're going to talk about in this unit where being precise is important, being exact, knowing the right way to go about doing things. Okay? All right, so our unit goals, the 5 things I need you to be able to do by the end of this chapter. Okay? We're going to evaluate ethical practices in psychological studies. We're going to talk about what ethics are. We're going to discuss the different rules of ethics, and we're going to look at a few experiments and decide whether or not you guys think that they're ethical or not. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to discuss the importance of psychology as a science. Why is it really valuable, and why is it really important that we stick to that scientific method and we do the things that we're supposed to do? Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at placebos. We're going to define what a placebo is, and we're going to explain why psychologists might use one in a study. We are going to then design an experiment by identifying like the parts of the experiment. The independent variable, the dependent variable, the control group, the experimental group. I believe you guys have done these before, but in the event that you haven't, we'll go through it. And if you have, we're going to do a review to make sure that you guys know what's going on. All right. And last but not least, we're going to explain various other data collection methods, what they're good for, but also what their strengths and weaknesses are. It's not a crazy long chapter. We're actually looking at testing on this by next Thursday already. So you might want to make sure that you have good notes because you'll be allowed to use those on the test. On that note, I will be gone next Thursday and Friday, not tomorrow and Friday, but next week, Thursday and Friday. So I'll fill you in a little bit more on that later on or early next week. Okay, so here we go. Let's talk about ethics. We're just going to do 3 quick note slides today, nothing too crazy. So ethics are something that are really important in everyday life. We deal with ethical questions in everything that we do. You're walking down the hall, you find a $5 bill. Do you stick it in your pocket or do you take it to the office? Ethical question. Your best friend looks at you and says, hey, I need to tell you something, but I need you to be quiet about it. And they let you know that their significant other or someone is physically abusing them. Do you report that? Or do you say, hey, it's my friend and they told me something in confidence and I can't say or do anything? You work at a job and you find a document outlining the fact that several of your co-employees are going to be let go from the business within the next week. Do you, A, go around and tell the people, or B, keep it quiet because it's not part of your job and not part of your role in the company? Okay, so those are ethical questions. How do you decide? What would you do if you knew that one of your friends was doing something they weren't supposed to be doing? Would you do something to stop it? Okay, so ethics by definition in psychology and in science are a set of moral guidelines for right and wrong in life and in science. We look at them a lot when we do experimentation. The rules that we are going to look at are defined by the APA, the American Psychological Association. Again, APA stands for American Psychological Association, and there is a very long list of rules for ethical testing, things that you are allowed to do and things that you are not allowed to do. Now, the lines blur a little bit when we deal with non-human test subjects like lab rats or rabbits or dogs, but there are still rules about how to treat animals ethically. Okay. Now, there's a large argument in this part of things because there are people out there, and you can feel however you want to feel. I'm not going to tell you how I feel about it, who believe that testing on animals should not be allowed because a dog does not have the right to consent. They can't say, hey, I don't want to do this. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the 4 major rules. There's a lot of rules of ethics. Okay. It gets very specific and very small and very minute in what it starts to talk about. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to boil it down to 4 major idea pathways. And we're going to talk about the 4 major rules of ethics that kind of define what is and isn't allowed in science. Again, those are set up by the APA and are commonly supposed to be followed. Okay. The first is that subjects have the right to decline participation in an experiment, or they can quit or withdraw whenever they want to. So realistically, 1, you can't experiment on somebody without their knowing. And so you can't slide a new mystery vitamin into somebody's water every morning without asking their permission. That would be considered extremely unethical. It could be considered dangerous. You could put that person's health at risk. All right. And obviously that would be something that would be frowned upon. You are not supposed to observe somebody without the knowledge that they're being observed. Obviously, we have a word for that. We call it stalking. And stalking is a criminal offense, and it's bad, restraining orders and other similar things. Now, let's say that Mr. Dean decided he was going to be part of an experiment for me. He just walked by, said good morning. And I said, okay, that's great. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you on a treadmill, and we're going to have you answer questions. And for every question you get right, you're going to get a Skittle. And for every question you get wrong, we're going to give you a low-level shock through the feet, an electrode that we've hooked up to the treadmill. And he goes, okay, sounds all right. All right, so we get going. 2 + 2, 4, he gets a Skittle. 3 × 3, 9, he gets a Skittle. Square root of 144, 12, he gets a Skittle. Well, now we're going to amp things up, okay? And we start asking him questions he doesn't know the answer to, and we shock him. And then we shock him, and it gets a little worse. Then we shock him, and it gets a little worse. And he says, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. This hurts. I didn't really know what this is going to be. I don't want to deal with this. It's making my legs feel weird. It's making my heart feel weird. We can't go, but hey, you said you'd do this. Okay. People have the right to quit right up until the last second of an experiment. If Covance Clinical Research is doing a study on healthy males between the ages of 18 to 60. Covance Clinical Research will pay $4,500 for 11 overnight stays and 1 interview session done during the day. Please contact Covance Clinical Research at blah, 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 blah. If I signed up for that study and I made it to day 9 and went, nah, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home, or, oh, I don't like the way I'm feeling. I want to quit. They can't stop me. Now, they don't have to pay me the full amount, or they don't have to pay me at all, depending on what the contract I signed said. But you have the right to not participate, and you have the right to decline. The second one is that openness and honesty are essential. Now, listen, I don't have to tell people that I'm expecting this vitamin that I put in their water to cause like increased IQ or pain tolerance or anything like that. I don't have to tell them if it's just water or if they're getting the main part of the experiment. We'll talk about some of these ideas later on again. But I do have to let them know we're doing an experiment on where we're putting a vitamin in water. It's going to impact some things about your behavior. I might tell them we're testing IQ, intelligence. I may tell them that we're looking for side effects. I may tell them that they're going to take the vitamin 3 to 4 times a day. I may tell Mr. Dean, hey, it's going to be a shock. And progressively, as you get questions wrong, the shock is going to get worse. All right. But I have to be open and honest about what's going on. Okay, I have to be truthful when I'm asked questions. I don't have to say, oh, yeah, you've got the medicine, and this other person, they've just got straight water, because that can impact the outcome of the events. But I do have to let them know the basics of what's going on. The third one, the information that you obtain is confidential. If you're going to mention people, you need to change their names. You are not allowed to say things like, Matthew Braun scored the highest on the IQ test while Laura Grossman scored the lowest, okay? You can say one Marshall High School teacher had a high score of blah, 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 while another Marshall High School teacher scored the lowest at blah, blah, blah. That is not true. They're both very, very smart people. I would not expect either one of them to score low on an IQ test. It's the same thing in education. I can't go I can't go home and go, oh my God, Hanya scored a perfect 4 on the test, but Bailey only got a 2, and boy, it was a gift. Your doctor can't go home and go, oh my God, the worst case of pink eye I ever saw. That Chris Seep, man, he needed to come in here a couple weeks ago. They're not allowed to talk about things. There's you hear on the movies and TV shows that a lot of you guys watch, they talk about like patient-client privilege. There's the same thing in experimentation. Okay. And last but not least, experimenters have to assess the risk, inform the subject of that risk, and attempt to remove any long-term danger. If they don't, they're on the hook or responsible for any medical bills, therapy bills, or anything that their experiment or their test would cause. So if I find out that my treadmill experiment with Mr. Dean is actually causing burns to his feet, I have to go, ooh, this is a problem. Mr. Dean, sorry about that. We didn't expect that. I have to try to fix the treadmill so it's not burning his feet. And if there's any need for medical care, I'm going to be paying for that, even if it is long-term medical care that lasts well into his life. Okay. All right. That's the rules of ethics. Now, what I want to do is I want to run you through a couple of quick experiments. Okay. So a case to consider. In 1920, a psychologist named John Watson did an experiment into what is called emotional conditioning. He wanted to know if he could train fear into someone. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you that there are different versions of this little Albert story, but I'm going to tell you the one that is most common and maybe fits best into what we're doing. Maybe it's accurate. Maybe it's not 100% accurate. Okay. So Albert, the baby that you can see right there, was the child of a grad student. The grad student could not afford care for the child, according to most versions of the story. And so John Watson, who was the head of her department where she worked, said, well, while you go to class, you can leave the baby here in the lab, and we'll keep an eye on it. There's plenty of us here. There's plenty of lab assistants. There's constantly someone who can hang out with Albert. By the way, that wasn't his real name, Albert. And so she was like, oh my God, thank you. And she left the baby and she went to class. Well, what started to happen is Watson decided that he wanted to figure out things that the kid liked. Rabbits, fluffy bunnies, mice, rats, dogs. And he started to expose the kid to these things little by little. And he figured out that the baby liked this white rat. And basically these things that were soft, fluffy, and usually white. The rabbit in the picture is gray, but it doesn't matter. Okay. And he would let the little baby play with these things, and the baby would giggle and laugh and touch him and pet him, and was generally pretty good with the animals. But then after a while, he would bring out the animal. The baby would start to have a good time. And he would take a crowbar and a hammer, piece of metal and a hammer, and he would strike the crowbar and hammer behind the little kid's head to scare him. The little kid would cry and would pull back away from the thing. He did that so much that the little kids started to put together, when I see the rat, these big scary noises happen. When I see the rabbit, these big scary noises happen. And so the little kid started to cry and scream when he just saw the rat and just saw the rabbit. And so Watson programmed this kid to feel fear in the presence of these items that shouldn't usually cause fear. Were ethical rules violated? Now, if you're going to say yes, you're correct, because according to, again, most versions of the story, the mother never gave permission for her child to be tested on. Nobody really considered the mental health or well-being of the child. And although he did maintain confidentiality, the boy's name was not Albert, there's definitely some risk involved in this that maybe wasn't assessed and removed. And so most people believe, although we learned a lot from the little Albert experiment, that it would not fly in today's world and would not be considered okay. All right. Last example. In 1973, a Stanford University professor named Philip Zimbardo, who's one of the leading psychological minds in the world, wanted to do a study on reference grouping, or the groups that people belong to, and how strongly we identify with the rules and norms of the group. And so he decided to run what he called the Stanford Prisoner Guard experiment. They had 24 participants. Okay. They set up a fake jail, and 12 of the participants became prisoners, and 12 of the participants became prison guards. They were given the proper uniforms. The prison guards were given some training. The prisoners were arrested at their places of work, in class, and home, and brought to stay in this mock jail that had real cells and real prison beds and the whole thing. It was supposed to last a pretty decent period of time, of 14 days, but it only lasted for 6 days because the guards started to become brutal toward the prisoners, and the prisoners started to do small acts of rebellion. For instance, in some documentaries, I actually saw where one prisoner had taken a toothbrush and sharpened the end of it and was going to potentially use it to stab any of the prison guards that were dealing with them. After the thing was ended, a number of the prisoners said that they were dealing with symptoms like post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. Now, if you think about the rules, were rules violated? Okay. Were the people allowed to quit whenever they wanted to? I think so. Did they agree to sign up? Yes. Was their information kept confidential? Yes and no, because they filmed it, and since then it's been a documentary, and so you can identify people by looking at it. Did they assess the risk and all those different things? Yeah, and they ended things as soon as things got really sketchy, and actually paid for mental health care for the people involved. Now, did they maybe do a good job assessing the risk? I can't be really sure about that. Okay. Were they open and honest? I think so. So a lot of people think, although the experiment went off the rails a little bit, that at least by definition, what Zimbardo did may have been ethical. The only argument that you really hear is maybe it should have been stopped sooner than it was. So possibly, maybe gray area on that one. Okay, so that's everything for today. Hopefully you wrote the journal. Hopefully you got down the idea of ethics. There is an assignment in Classroom called Chapter 2 Crash Course. It's cocked off to the side. There it is. Okay, where you're going to click on the video and watch it. And then there are, I believe it's 9 questions this week for you to do by Monday at midnight. If you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.